Welcome to the podcast, where we teach you how to create marketing that pops. Get ready for refreshing conversations with industry experts, trendsetters, and creative minds that'll leave you bubbling with inspiration. Get ready to turn up the volume on your business. Let's get talking. Well, welcome back to Marketing That Pops. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Michelle.
And today we are joined by Autumn Karcey. Autumn is the founder of Cultivo and Artemis CoPack and has 20 years of experience in the cannabis cultivation and facility design. She manages multiple farms and brands while advocating for her business industry standards in the medical grade cannabis. Welcome to the podcast, Autumn. If I left anything out, please tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I started a design build firm over 10 years ago now called Cultivo. And we basically specialized in building large-scale indoor facilities and labs, processing facilities, greenhouses, so anything cannabis related. We've worked in about 25 states and 3 countries. So we've designed and implemented millions of square feet kind of across the globe with that, with Cultivo. In 2020, I started another business, Artemis CoPack, which is a 67,000 square foot processing facility. We're located in Northern California, and we specialize in co-packing for different brands. We also have 2 vertically integrated farms that work intrinsically with our facility. Those are multi-acre outdoor farms here in Lake County, California.
Very cool.
Awesome.
I'm excited to kind of dig into that today. But with every episode, we start off with a myth that we like our guests to debunk. So this episode is no different, and I have one for you. So the myth is, with the increasing legalization of home cultivation, some believe that growing high quality cannabis at home is a simple process. What would you say to that?
I think it depends who you are. I really think it comes down to either you have that green thumb or you don't. I have friends that will kill any houseplant that you give them.
That's me.
So if they were to try to set up a tent with, all of the nutrients and instructions and everything, something would definitely go wrong. I think cultivating on any level, whether it's small scale or large scale, takes a unique attention to detail. And that's either inherent in somebody's personality or it's not. So yes, I don't think cultivating is easy and that anyone can do it. I think it depends on your motivation and your passion for the plant and those types of things. And of course, your attention to detail.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm definitely a plant killer. So it would not be me.
It's like cooking, right? Not everyone's a great cook.
Right.
Yeah. I know I have a lot of plants, but it's because when my mom passed away, I got all of these plants. And so I felt obligated to keep them growing because of my mom, and there's a couple plants at my house. I'm like, did I feed them too much water? Are they not getting enough water? Because when you just Google it, it's you either gave them too much or too little. It's okay, yeah. That's not helpful.
Where's the happy medium? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, like you said, you started in 2015. So can you take us back to the beginning, the earlier stages in your career, and tell us what was it about the cannabis industry that really drew you?
Actually started in 2003. And I started as a home grower, as most did back then. We had Proposition 215 in California, which allowed you to grow under a medical program, and you were able to then sell your products to dispensaries for patients. So that program, I started in 2003. I had 8 lights in my garage, and it's kind of a funny story because my brother grew up north in Humboldt, Mendocino County areas. And, I really wanted to be a part of this industry. And at that time, there weren't a lot of female growers because it was fairly dangerous, not because women didn't want to do it. It was just it was more underground then. It wasn't as cool as it is today. And so I think, being worried for my safety, said, no, you don't want to do this. And I kept bothering him. And then one day he left me, I think 6 or 8 analog ballasts, which is our lighting system, and a tray of clones, and said, good luck, and then left. And so I made friends with the guys at the local hydro store and read every book I could get my hands on, and, planted my first crop, did very well with the first crop. And that kind of just expanded into, multiple home grow situations, which evolved into warehouses, which later evolved into the design build firm. Once everything became legal and Colorado came online with recreational and Canada came online with their federal legalization, I had the opportunity to start working with architects and engineers and designing these cultivation facilities.
Okay. You kind of mentioned that, in the beginning, like you kind of have to figure it out, like when you're growing. What were some of the lessons that maybe you learned along the way to like grow high quality cannabis that kind of helped you to shape your approach when you were going into these larger facilities?
Oh, geez, everything from overwatering to underwatering. We didn't have high-end irrigation systems at that time, so everything was kind of watered. You'd have to measure the weight of the pot and feel the moisture in the soil and just kind of gauge, is it too much or not enough, to your point.
Right.
And really just learning how to crop steer, and the drying curing process was also very challenging. Knowing, when it's too dry or when it's perfect. And, back in those days, cannabis was worth up to $6,000 a pound. And so you could cure in mason jars and individualize everything and give it that extra care and that extra step that you just don't see today because of the commercialization of cannabis.
Yeah.
So it really allowed me to be kind of hands-on, and I didn't get my first automated irrigation system until, years later, when they were introduced. It just wasn't happening back in 2003. And yeah, I mean, it's just trial and error on all of it. Luckily, I never had a failed crop during that time, which a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I found that I was really good at and really passionate about. And so I just spending a lot of time in the garden and figuring these things out, reading books, and, getting to know your guys at the local hydro store, and information sharing was just different back then. It was really word of mouth and meeting with people that were growing and that sort of thing. Now you can just Google everything. So
yeah. And AI and, all of these different things. But yeah. Is there one mistake that you made that was pivotal in how you run your business?
I think there were several. I think I've made every mistake under the sun to get to where I am today, right? That's the experience part. One that stuck out, I mean, probably hand watering for as long as I did. Even when automated irrigation systems came out, I got my first dosatron set up and completely, wired the entire warehouse, which I think was like 24 lights at the time, which at that time was huge. And I was still hand watering every day. And then I wired the automation irrigation system up, and I stared at it for about 6 months and was just afraid to and then I finally turned it on, and it was absolutely life-changing. I'm like, okay, I should have done this.
I can imagine how much more time you got back for yourself.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It was intimidating.
I always have this, did you ever watch that Jim Belushi, reality show about his farm?
No.
So I always have that, visual in my head of one little mistake you can ruin the entire crop, because he had, he spent all this money, this beautiful, location and everything. And then somebody forgot to turn off the lights at night or dim them or something. And then when they came back in the morning, all the plants were just crumbling because they just got too much heat like all night long. And it's like, oh my gosh, one little mistake like that can totally like screw your whole business. So he had to start
I've
all
actually
over
had
again.
that happen. They say, when you're a grower, you never get to go on vacation for that reason. And way back when we had the automated, or not even automated, but the analog spa timers where they had the little pins in them and you would set your photo period to 12 and 12. Well, as those timers tick around every single day, they'll start to loosen the screws. So I went on vacation and came back, and as it had turned, it loosened the entire screw, and then my plants reverted back into veg. So I had, fully formed buds with veg plants kind of coming out the top of them. So, yeah.
It's stressful. I think back to like when I started Thrive Pop too. It's like, oh my gosh, like you make so many mistakes, and like at the time you're so stressed out about it, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. And then like later, after you've fixed everything, you can look back and go, yeah, that's how I learned not to do that again. So
yeah, I think it's a fair amount of humility and learning to, learn and evolve from your mistakes is very important.
Yeah.
What are some of the key considerations for like environmental and like sustainability standpoints that you prioritize within your design?
It's different for every facility, but I think HVAC plays a major role in sustainability. A lot of facilities that I would either do plan set reviews for, or go into facilities after they were already built. There's not they're not teaching this in architecture and engineering school, that now you have plants inside, you're adding heat, you have transpiration. All of these different factors where you're basically trying to control a tropical environment indoors. Right. And so when engineers get a hold of these types of things and they haven't designed for it before, because typically in engineering you're trying to just cut out your solar gains that are based on the insulative value of your building. Mm-hmm. And so when you add your outside on an inside environment, it's really confusing for engineers to try to overcome that. And they've gotten a lot better in recent years. But in the beginning, the response to that was, okay, just over-engineer it by 30%, over-engineer it by 50%, or under-engineer it because so all of these things really add, the price of your cogs will go up if you have an over-engineered facility. You're then paying 30% higher construction margin on equipment and implementation of that equipment. And so good to have, a little bit of respect so that you can account for record highs and record lows as we see with climate change and things like that. Days are getting hotter, winters are getting colder. So you want to account for those things, but not by 30 to 50% overkill on your capacity. So really knowing what you're doing and calcing everything in the building. What we do, and I'm specifically speaking to like indoor cultivation, greenhouses is its own thing, but yeah, in indoor cultivation, you really have to calc every light, the plants, the type of media that you're going to be using, your humidity, and really looking at the different systems. And HVAC specifically is a very highly incentivized industry based on what type of equipment that you sell. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times people will sell the wrong equipment because the contractor is going to make a lot of money on it, or the engineer thinks it's what they should use. And then also the environment that you're implementing those systems in. A chilling system is going to work completely differently if you're in Canada versus Hawaii,
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, I don't know why I never even thought about that. Like the location, obviously you think like, okay, everything is inside and it's all controlled, but then also you still have to think about location and like the outside atmosphere too. Like, yeah, that's a lot.
Yep. If you have freezing cold temperatures in like Buffalo, New York, and you've got that outdoor equipment, you better make sure it can handle those those really cold days. And adversely, if you've got 80% humidity and 110 degrees, it's a whole different environment. So that matters when you're speccing and implementing the equipment.
Yeah. Man, that's a lot, and I commend you, okay? Because I couldn't do it.
I know. It's like overwhelming listening to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, one little thing.
Yes. I'd love to hear more about Artemis and just like what made you start it, and like what was your vision behind it?
Yeah, so I had been, designing facilities for over a decade and had built some really incredible facilities, work with just about every cultivator I wanted to work with, and was really proud of that career. But it was also very challenging to keep, setting up these projects in different parts of the world. COVID hit, and a large part of my job was dependent on traveling. So I was working in different countries and different states at the time that COVID hit, and I could no longer get on a plane. So kind of started thinking and reevaluating, as a lot of people did during COVID, and decided I wanted to move back into operations and start a farm again. And Northern California had always really appealed to me. And my child was going to be off to college soon, so I was going to be an empty nester. And it just kind of came about organically. I have one partner in this facility, and basically we decided to start a small farm, and that was kind of the ethos of how this whole thing came about. And the small farm turned into, two multi-acre farms and a 67,000 square foot processing facility, because I guess I don't really know how to do small.
Yeah, I was just like, what's something small?
Yeah, it's not in my nature. So, so we started this facility. We have 7 different buildings on our campus. Each one is dedicated to a different process. So we have a 20,000 square foot high-end drying facility where I can fit about 60,000 to 80,000 wet pounds at a time. We have incredible outdoor cultivation that happens in Northern California that we're world renowned for. But what I noticed when I moved here was that people would spend all this time cultivating that flower, and at the end of it, they would shove it in a barn that's 110 degrees, or they would, dry it in army tents or anything like that. And from my design experience from indoor cultivation, I thought, what if we build a drying facility that mirrors the indoor cultivation drying facilities? So the same moisture removal, insulation, climate controlled. And so that's what we did here, just on a very large scale. So each bay is about 5,000 square feet per bay, and we have about 4 of them. And so each one will fit about 20,000 wet pounds at a time. And that climate control has really helped bring up the quality of the flower. So people will look at the flower that's dried in our facility and go and assume that it's a greenhouse, that it was cultivated in a greenhouse. Nice. And so that's our drying facility. Then we have a kind of high-end trimming area and packaging. We run 4 Mobius machines, 2 in tandem with sorters. So we can move through a huge amount of product. And when you're dealing with acres, and we are in California, you need high-end automated equipment to run through that many pounds at a time. So we can also hand finish. We don't run everything through. We can do a single pass through the machine and then hand finish it, so it has a nicer look to the bud, depending on what our client's looking for. And then that kind of bleeds into our processing facility, where we have high-end bagging lines that can run about 1,000 Mylar bags in a single shift in like an hour. And we have a jarring line, which has about the same throughput and capacity. Those are attached to green vaults where you can actually select on the machine. I want, 3 large buds in this jar and 2 small buds, and it'll find those buds through 11 different scales and make them uniform in each jar. And it also eliminates 10 to 15% in overpack. So when you have human labor packing jars and things like that, run into overpack, which, can result in 10 to 15% increase.
Yes.
Wow.
That sounds amazing. And
I know, like, I'm like overwhelmed just listening to you. Like, wow. I mean, like, obviously this is a marketing podcast. How have you marketed your product, and like, what do you feel has been the most beneficial for your business?
I think the automated equipment that we have kind of speaks for itself. Even though California is a very big state, the industry is fairly small here. And being that I've, been in the industry for a long time, I think, your network is your net worth. And I have a pretty big network. So that's kind of how we've been advertising. I mean, it's really been, from the branding and marketing standpoint, like a bootstrapped initiative. Like, I am the salesperson, and I run all the Instagram accounts, and all of our social media is personally ran by me. And so that's kind of how we've been approaching it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and you think about the cannabis industry and that, like, it's really big, but it's really not once you start, getting into the weeds of everything. So yeah.
It's a very small industry.
You mentioned how in the beginning, like, there wasn't a lot of women in the industry. How have you, I mean, I obviously have seen it change, and what has that change been like for you, and like the growth over the years?
I have a lot of amazing women that I work with here. When I ran the design build firm, I kind of always envisioned that I would hire, a bunch of women that wanted to build these facilities with me, and I just didn't get those resumes submitted. So, I ended up working with primarily men for the last, 20 some odd years. And it's only been in the last, say like 5 to 8 years where we've seen this influx of more females at the table, which I think is fantastic. For me, it always comes down to, who you are and how you work and what your credentials are. It's a very strange thing to me that we're asked all the time, what's it like to be a female in the cannabis industry? And guys are not asked that question. It's not a thing. So I'm just kind of for finding the best people and the best resumes and getting them a seat at the table.
Great.
Everything has a trend within marketing and also in the cannabis industry. Is there any cannabis trends that you are kind of like completely over, or you like to see more of?
Yes, THC percentage. I'm over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just gotten way out of hand with consumers shopping for THC levels. And I know there are those consumers that want, the highest amount of THC, but we also cut out the people from like my parents' generation where they don't want to get completely obliterated. Like, they want to feel good, and I think as consumers understand how terpenes play into the overall feeling that you get from cannabis, how the different cannabinoids play into that. It's not just about THC level. I mean, there's over 140 cannabinoids in this plant, and we're only focused on one. I think it's a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
I know a lot of people have said that other people I've talked to of trends that they are kind of over is when they talk about people hybrids and specific strains, and there's a lot of controversy over that and a lot of discord of I only smoke indica, or this, I only do this hybrid. What do you have to say about that whole aspect?
I mean, if we're speaking technically about it, everything's a hybrid, unless you found that plant growing in Afghanistan on the side of a waterfall and it hasn't been touched in 10,000 years. It's a hybrid.
Yeah.
So, I think there are definitely strains that more lean sativa dominant or lean more indica dominant, but I believe everything's a hybrid. And I think, I think it's all consumer driven, and I think it might be a lot of placebo effect. Like I only smoke sativa or I only smoke indica. You see a lot of sativas like geared towards women, for example, and like, oh no, I can't smoke indica, it's too heavy. So I think everybody's body is completely different and unique, and that folks should be just more open to different experiences instead of just sticking with one. I only drink Merlot, well, it might be a summer day and you want a glass of Chardonnay, like, we don't do it in the beverage alcohol industry where we stick with one kind of thing. So I think it's a lot of myths there.
I feel like that just kind of like plays into exactly what you're saying, just like the placebos and the over marketing, and some aspects of that too.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Like, this will make you sleepy, or
I've been seeing a lot more beverages. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's amazing. I mean, I am really looking forward to the day where they infuse alcoholic beverages with cannabis and have like, some kind of balance of alcoholic beverages with cannabis. I think it's a nice combination. And that could be a really huge industry. I mean, that's what we want, right? Parity with alcohol and all of the industries that are far less regulated than we are. So yeah, it would be nice to see those ABC restrictions kind of released. Forward to that.
Yes. So I have two major questions left for you. Looking ahead, what predictions for the future of the cannabis industry are you like most excited for in terms of like innovation or growth, or even like regulations? You mentioned that too. What are you most excited for?
I think there's a lot of innovation and growth happening, especially like here in California, where it's gotten so competitive and so oversaturated that companies are having to get more and more scrappy and lean and understand their numbers and understand their COGS and implement automation and all of the things that kind of drive the business forward, that allows you to sustain in a really, really competitive environment. And I know you guys face the same thing in Michigan, right? Where we have similar markets and similar environments with the oversaturation and overproduction of cannabis. I would say I'd love to look forward to what's happening in Europe right now is very interesting to me. I'm leaving for Cannabis on Monday, so it's always good to get a beat on the European market because it's in such a nascent stage that it's really excited to see the EU kind of open up for cannabis.
Yeah. What would be your goal for like educators and lawmakers? Like, I feel like we need to educate people more, even just like what we were saying about strains. Is there anything that you would think is like most important for people to be educated when it comes to cannabis?
I think proper dosing protocols. I think that people can be really easily turned off to cannabis if they take too much, if they go and shop and say, hey, I'm just going to try this as a new consumer. And then, they're in a dispensary getting sold, really high THC content or a high edible. And then they have a really negative experience. And we've all met those people that are like, oh no, cannabis is not for me. Where if you take it back, and maybe if that person took like a 5 milligram edible, they wouldn't have the same experience. And so I think consumer education is so important. And like I said, everybody's body works it completely differently. And so understanding proper dosing protocols
Yeah.
and, starting really small and then working your way up as you gain a tolerance is important.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah. I know that's where I'm at because I have had bad experience and I'm like,
Me too.
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've tried other things and it's been much better experiences. I know I said 2 questions, but I know that you have like a couple brands that are under you that like obviously the Artemis brand, and there's the Smugglers and then the Cali Girls. Is there another one that maybe I missed?
Nope, that's our 3. Yeah.
Okay.
You got them all.
Okay, great. So how would you say like you differentiate and like what is the different personalities? Just coming from like a marketing standpoint.
So Smugglers is a brand that I created with a partner of mine that was based on kind of our family history. My father spent time in a Mexican prison for smuggling in the 1970s. And it really changed the trajectory of his life and his career path. And he ended up having an amazing life and career path. But that was a very pivotal moment in getting arrested in the 70s and then going home to your hometown and no one will hire you. And he had to move to Hawaii to kind of and change his name and really become someone else. And that's where he met my mom. And he was big on the NASCAR circuit for years and was a race car mechanic. And so, seeing what he went through, and then when I entered the cannabis industry, even when we had legal dispensaries and all of these things, like his PTSD, he couldn't even walk into them for years.
Yeah.
And my brother and I are both in the industry. And he wouldn't visit our legal licensed properties for years. Like I just got him to this facility after 20 years. He's like, I feel like the feds are going to descend that day and take me back to prison. So he was really shell shocked from the experience. And I wanted to create a brand that kind of honored him and the other smugglers that have, really worked hard to bring this plant, where it is. This plant is here because of smugglers. And I think that taking the ugliness out of that word is really important and honoring the people that have brought the plant where it is today. And Cali Girls is kind of our fun female focused brand where we do pre-rolls and, vape pens, things that are really easy to consume, and then have low to high dosages on those. And then Artemis Farms is our sun-grown brand that's really affordable that anybody can access. And it's grown here on our farms and then processed through our facility.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a great story.
Thanks.
Well, we thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been great hearing your story. I've learned a lot and I would love to see that whole kind of system that you have with the different buds. That would be so cool. But how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to connect with you on the internet?
So on Instagram, it's Autumn Cultivo, Cultivo. And then Artemis CoPack is also on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn under Autumn Karcey. And yeah, all the socials. And we of course have websites as well, artemiscopack.com. And yeah, we help brands put things in bags and get them on the shelf and keep the freshness within your product. So
wonderful.
I'm looking for those services. That's what we do.
Awesome. Well, we'll have all of that linked below for you guys. And thanks again, Autumn, for joining us today. And if you guys are interested, please make sure that you check out our next episodes. And we'll check you on the next episode.
All right. See ya.
Having me.
Thanks for listening with us today. Stay tuned for the latest in web marketing and design from ThrivePop. Want to be a pop star? Head over to thrivepop.com/podcast to join our mailing list for episode notifications, sneak peeks, listener feedback, and more.